Ah, I see you've stumbled into my time machine somehow. Welcome to 2001, November to be exact. In cinemas everywhere, people could experience the world of Harry Potter on the big screen for the first time. Many had been eagerly awaiting this film adaptation of the successful fantasy novel series by J.K. Rowling, and the movie did not disappoint. Which is understandable. I mean, seeing an abused kid with a bowl haircut rise to become a masterful wizard celebrity was a thrilling experience. Harry Potter was on the fast track to be a worldwide phenomenon, and so it was to be expected that the merchandise train would come rolling up to platform 9 3/4. As with most blockbuster hits, it was only a matter of time before video game companies got involved, and for over a decade they have produced quite the collection. Harry Potter games are numerous. You have many versions of each movie on many different platforms, along with spin-offs like Quidditch World Cup and Harry Potter Kinect. Ugh, I can smell the lukewarm reviews rolling in right now. But before this stream of games set in Hogwarts flooded the market, there was only one. I am of course talking about Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. But in America, they decided that title wasn't exciting enough for kids, so they changed it to Sorcerer's Stone, causing many headaches for decades to come. I'll be sticking with the original title for this video. That winter season, we saw the release of Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone on the PC, PS1, Game Boy Advance, and Game Boy Color. All of these versions played differently, as they were not simple ports, but were all developed by different companies. The PC version and the PS1 version are undoubtedly the most beloved iterations of the game that I'm sure some of you watching right now are having a nostalgia seizure over. These two games were 3D action platformers with some puzzle-based gameplay. On the Game Boy Advance, you had a rather tough adventure/puzzle game, while on the Game Boy Color, you had a turn-based role-playing game. But out of these four versions, I only played one, and that was the Game Boy Color version. It was like a reskinned Final Fantasy, with only the most basic mechanics intact, but I still enjoyed the heck out of it, though I have to say that the sequel, Chamber of Secrets on Game Boy Color, was my favorite. Yet that is not what this video is about, for you see, there exists another version, a version that would be released 2 years later for the Xbox, the PS2, and the GameCube. Behold, the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone Remake by Warthog Games. This beauty came out a whole year after the Chamber of Secrets movie and game was released, and it begs the question, why? Well, it has to do with the Chamber of Secrets video game from 2002. It received positive reviews as it utilized a new game engine and fixed up on a lot of the problems that the PS1 version of the first game had. Now, the following is just speculation on my end, but I think that Warthog saw the success of this game and realized that they could reuse most of the game's assets and thus remake the Philosopher's Stone using this new engine. And so it was that spells, character models, and world maps were almost directly ripped from the second game and used in the first game's remake. Thus why the Chamber of Secrets on PS2 and the Philosopher's Stone on PS2 look so similar. Even down to the dialogue in some cutscenes.
Hey Harry! Fred and George have set up a shop. You can trade all kinds of things with them for spells and really wicked stuff.
Wow, I must go and see them. Where are they?
Hey Harry, Fred and George have set up a shop. You can trade all kinds of things with them for spells and really wicked stuff.
Wow, I must go and see them. Where are they?
Go through that door and through the reading room. There's a portrait on the other side.
What's the password?
Go through that door and through the reading room. There's a portrait on the other side.
What's the password?
The Philosopher's Stone remake was criticized for this, but to a kid who was none the wiser, this was simply a great Hogwarts experience. Enter a young dark. Unlike a lot of game reviewers on YouTube, I didn't really grow up with an N64 or a PS1. It wasn't until Christmas 2003 that I got my first gaming console, a PlayStation 2. Now, it came bundled with the game Jak 2 Renegade, but my parents deemed it too violent for me, so they made me trade it in for a different game. And I got Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone. And what a magical first experience that would turn out to be. The game has an air of wonder to it with its excellent narration by Stephen Fry, paired with the amazing soundtrack by the one and only Jeremy Soule, the man whose music you might recognize from games like Morrowind, Oblivion, and Skyrim. While the game itself follows the storyline of the first movie very closely, it encourages exploration and free roaming, letting you do side quests for other students, raid classrooms for their magic beans, or just enjoy the beautiful exterior of Hogwarts Castle, on foot or on broomstick. You learn spells by attending classes and completing challenges for the teacher, but many of these scenarios I found to be dark and scary, especially to a kid like me who was in the 2nd grade. My first real horror experience was undoubtedly during the first Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson I had with Professor Quirrell.
Potter, your turn. The Lumos spellbook is located on the other side of the crawl space. Find it and the spell will be yours. You must then return here to the classroom.
No problem at all, Professor. I'll just go into this dark and creepy dungeon, slide along this wall, and whoa! Then, not even 15 minutes after I was pushed to my death, I was trapped in a small room with 2 terrifying ghost ladies that tried to murder me, and as a kid I would often refuse to play through these sections by myself, yelling for Mom because I wanted her to come sit next to me as I did them. It didn't help that I had no memory card for my PS2 during the first few weeks of playing either, meaning every time I went to bed for the night, I lost all of my progress and had to start over again in the morning. It has made me memorize the starting sections of the game quite well, and thus why the music in these sections hit my nostalgia factor so gosh darn hard. Needless to say, the Philosopher's Stone and I go way back, so when I did some research for this episode I found out that the game wasn't really received all that well, but all the things that were pointed out by reviewers as flaws were things I didn't really mind as a kid, so I decided to play through the game one more time and try to have a critical eye for details and bugs and flaws in the gameplay, and my nostalgia goggles were off, and I saw some terrifying things without them. Now, this is a kid's game for all intents and purposes, so I feel like I should cut it some slack, but I feel it is good practice for myself to try and look at this thing that I care so much about with an objective point of view. And if anything I'm praising in this game is ripped directly from the Chamber of Secrets, I wouldn't know because I haven't actually played Chamber of Secrets. I played it a little bit at a friend's house, but not much. Just some exploration of Diagon Alley, ripping out basilisk teeth with a magical sword, or throwing dung bombs at Dumbledore. It was a blast though, I have to admit. So without further ado, let's get into the story. The game follows Harry Potter during his first year at Hogwarts, from meeting his friends Ron and Hermione to battling the evil Lord Voldemort at the end of the semester. Each day at Hogwarts comes with a list of tasks to complete, be it to gather ingredients for potions claws, meet Hagrid in his hut for some tea, or engage in some good old Quidditch activities, which there are sadly too few of. However, you are free to run around the castle and explore at your own pace, as there are many secrets and goodies to be found, and it was very exciting for young Dark to find these hidden things. Like how you can push certain walls and bookshelves to reveal new passages, or how you could rob your fellow students of all the stash in their desks. During said adventures, you will come across Bertie Bott's every flavor beans, and these are the currency of the game. You can use these to trade goods with Ron's older brothers, Fred and George, whose shop is located in an old bathroom behind a magical painting. The curious thing is that Harry seemingly takes a bite out of every bean he collects, because he announces to the world what flavor it is that he just picked up, but the way he says it makes it seem as if he actually tasted it.
Earwax flavour? Bogey.
Regardless of Harry's saliva, the brothers take these beans in exchange for stink pellets, dung bombs, wizard cards, and for only 10 beans you can have a dive into the mystery chest.
Wow, I've got to try this.
It sounds like fun, yes. But then, you haven't put your hand in yet.
Oh boy, I wonder what's in it! Harry, you put that down at once! You're too innocent for this! Please, avert your eyes! Stink pellets and dung bombs are rather useless, only really helpful if you wish to mess with the school's students and prefects. The wizard cards, on the other hand, are a series of collectibles that showcase some of the greatest witches and wizards in the Harry Potter universe, complete with a description read by Stephen Fry.
Albus Dumbledore, currently Headmaster of Hogwarts.
Collect enough cards and Harry will receive another lightning scar, which acts as your health bar. If you take damage, you can heal it up with chocolate frogs or cauldron cakes, yet I fail to see how getting smashed by a mountain troll's hammer can be negated by a tasty pastry. The spells you learn throughout the game all have their different uses. You have Flipendo, which is often used to break pots, hit switches, or stun enemies. Lumos will light up dark areas and reveal secret passages. Alohomora will unlock doors. Spongify will make surfaces rubbery and bouncy. Defindo will cut through thick objects, while Incendio will put things aflame. These are all definitely spells we should be teaching 11-year-olds, right? And as if the spells weren't dangerous enough, the challenges to get them are absurd. To get a passing grade in your class, you must brave through gloomy dungeons filled with imps, ghosts, and fire-farting turtles. And don't even get me started on the trolls and the venomous plants. Why Hogwarts hasn't been sued out the butt is beyond me. I mean, how has Draco's father not heard about this yet? Now, all the things you heard me say about the game are things that I wrote down before playing through it again. It's a rather short experience. I mean, if you just stick to the main objectives, you can finish it relatively quickly. I did it in about 5 hours, so I did notice a few things that I want to point out about the game. So here we go. First of all, the game is buggy. You will have students T-posing around Hogwarts, Harry's hand won't line up with doorknobs, some sound effects are missing, you can fall out of the map, and this student has 2 haircuts merging together on his head. You get my drift. Another big factor is the camera, as it is pretty awful. Harry will automatically jump if you run to a ledge, and pairing this with a camera that does its own thing and tends to point away from the gap you have to jump makes it quite tricky. The voice acting is pretty good, but the dialogue itself feels clunky and overly expositional. It feels like they had to shoehorn in important plot details in seemingly everyday conversation just to have the story make any semblance of sense.
Harry, you heard what Professor Flitwick said? We'd better get those ingredients of potions. Professor Snape, he doesn't want to teach potions. Everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts, Snape. I'll meet you at Hagrid's.
Everything is so convenient to the plot, and while that can be said to be a flaw with the main material itself, it's even more obvious when it's crammed into a relatively short game, although I did chuckle at some parts in the game.
Will you look at this? I've got some presents. What did you expect? Turnips?
The animation in many parts of the game feels lazy. Background characters barely move, they are low resolution, you can see students wearing purple house robes, and I think this guy just had a heart attack. I am a bit disappointed, honestly, because I feel that if the developers had spent more time polishing this, maybe added 2 or 3 days of Hogwarts time and thus been able to pace the story better, so much could have been improved. The bugs especially are what makes me wonder. You'd think that they would have more time to playtest it since they wouldn't have to create that many original game assets this time around. So where did the development time go? All of that aside, this is a childhood gem of mine. It is the first gem, in fact. And I mean, it does have a certain charm to it that no amount of bugs can ruin. I still remember raiding classrooms on early Sunday mornings while I could smell bacon frying in the kitchen, back when I was a little derp. Or how I was stuck on the Quirrell fight for months before realizing how to defeat him. I remember writing about a boss fight with a venomous tentacula for a 3rd grade assignment, where I went into detail on how Mom and I finally figured out how to defeat it by using Defindo and Incendio. I don't think my teacher understood a lot of what I wrote, but that didn't matter. I had fun. And these are all my earliest gaming memories, and I mean, that has to count for something, right? This game's impact on me was definitely a positive one. But I suppose that I should take Dumbledore's advice and move on from this game now and not dwell on the past anymore. I sometimes boot it up just to try and relive the carefree days of my childhood, get lost in the beautiful music, but I think this is my final playthrough.
It does not do to dwell on dreams, Harry, and forget to live. I think I should take this for now, lest it get you into trouble. Now, why don't you get off to bed?
This game will always have a special place in my heart. Sure, it might have ripped a lot of his assets from a different games, and the bugs are surely annoying, but to a kid who was none the wiser, this really didn't matter that much. because exploring Hogwarts, being during the day or during the night, it was a magical experience, and the soundtrack by Jeremy Soule just helped it all come together. This was a great first experience when it comes to the world of video games, and it was what really sparked my love for the medium as a whole. So my final rating for this game is 394 out of 9 3/4. Stay dark and magical. Incendio! Thank you so much for watching this retro replay. I have made several others of these, so if you wish to see them, you can find a playlist to it down below. Stay magical, everybody.